Today's show is sponsored by our friends at Orca Coolers. It is fall, but it is dad season all year round because if you use code DADSEASON, that's DADSEASON, you will get 20% off your order at Orca Coolers. Not only do you know they have awesome coolers, tumblers, they just put out a white oak barrel tumbler, but there are fall items. They have Halloween tumblers and Halloween drink sets, and check it out. You want to get something for yourself, the wife, the kids, whatever it is, go to orcacoolers.com, use code DADSEASON, and have everybody be jealous of you this fall. Today's show is also sponsored by our friends at distilleryproducts.com. If you want laser edge glassware, they also have bar tools and swag, flasks, all sorts of cool things. Go to distilleryproducts.com. Reach out to me. If you see something you like, I'd be happy to get you in touch with my friends Carson, Janie, Vicky, all the folks over at the family-owned and operated distilleryproducts.com. And go to their sister site, premiumbarproducts.com. Go to the top of the page, look at the menu, click that menu, hit DDB glass. That's where you can get all the Dad's Drinking Bourbon, Glencairns, Kenzie glasses, and hopefully we'll be adding some more there, but check them out at distilleryproducts.com. Last but not least, today's show is also sponsored by our friends at action247.com. Zeke and I did not get together this week. It was a rough week, so we didn't do picks. I'm going to have to talk to him today and see if we could get some picks in before tomorrow, but it's the MLB playoffs. It's Friday deposit boost. Every Friday, everyone on the book gets a deposit boost, so you can use code DADS100. They will match up to $400 of your first deposit, and then there's also an additional code on Fridays. Check out what's going on at action247.com because they have all these things that pop up that are specials and things like that. That's where those free live bets are going to be. Check out Saturday Night Fights, and then there is the first touchdown scorer insurance. If you bet on the first touchdown scorer in any NFL game, you'll get your stake back as a free bet if it doesn't hit. But check out action247.com. Use code DADS100 and they'll match up to $400 of your first deposit. Cheers, y'all. Zeke, what you got for me?
Well, normally we have a cold open to add a little fluff or humor and maybe even waste a little time. But I think our group here sitting around tonight doesn't need to wait any longer than we've already kept them. So let's get this show rolling.
I think they want to see if you're going to be funny, though. So they want to hear you say something.
Well, the group that's here with us has already heard some jokes, so we're good.
Did they, though?
They laughed at you a lot. That's all I ever care about.
But they made the jokes. You didn't make the jokes.
I made the tent and awning joke.
So you're 1 for 20?
I mean, I've seen texts that we get when it's a group and they ask you what size hoodie you need. It's a tent and awning size.
Let's just see if we could get your batting average up. Hello, everyone. My name is John Edwards, and with me, as always, is that guy over there, Zeke Baker. And together, we make the Dad's Drinking Bourbon. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, thank you for making us a part of your day. It is a very special day. We are joined by the folks from Company Distilling, the best-looking lawyer in all of spirits, in Heath Clark. We have the master of disaster, the colossus of clout, Mr. Kris Tatum. Right across from me. I was going to say something about his hair, but
or lack thereof.
You just got to go all in.
It's a short story.
Yeah, it's a short story really quick.
How come you don't bick it at this point?
It's kind of lazy.
It's a fair
I
question.
Enjoy getting a haircut.
It's just a scalp
John
massage.
does too. It's just on his back.
You're welcome. All day.
And then we have, last but not least, the nicest one of the three of you.
Nathan Osborne.
I don't understand how he found you two because he doesn't necessarily fit with your brand of humor. And he distills whiskey a lot better than you do, Tatum. Heath gives him a run for his money, but Mr. Jeff Arnett, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you guys.
How do you deal with them?
It was great before we started a company that we had already learned how to work together. So So, people who don't know much about our stories, we're working at 3 different distilleries. But when we formed the Tennessee Distillers Guild and started meeting on a routine basis and started talking about, 1930s laws in Tennessee and how they were very restrictive to being successful, we set out to, change those, make them a little bit more modern and progressive. But we introduced 11 pieces of legislation. We got all of them to pass, which is almost unheard of in Tennessee. Even if you're right all the time, they'll still vote you down. But, we felt like we had learned to work together and had a respect for one another, enjoy the times that we spent together. Of course, Grains and Grits was our opportunity to socially hang out outside of business, and we really enjoyed the time there as well. So all that just kind of came together into a new company.
That is my favorite weekend. I mean, I say that over and over, but that's adult summer camp.
Yeah.
And it is the best event in Tennessee. If anybody needs to experience that or wants to experience that, don't hesitate, because it is just a great time. But it's important you say that. You talk about the laws. I mean, between the 3 of you, everything, Jeff, you brought as master distiller at Jack Daniel's. We have Kris Tatum, who was the president of the Tennessee Distillers Guild and all the knowledge that comes there. And Heath, who was kind of on the legal team for the Tennessee Distillers Guild, even though Rob would not say that you were officially in the pack, but you kind of were.
Rob provided the hair, the really good hair. Let's be honest.
But I mean, there's a lot of knowledge here. I mean, you're very involved. Heath, still, you are on the board. You advocate for the spirits industry in Tennessee. You're going to DC. You're going to Nashville to
Hell.
the.
Goes without saying.
But the 3 of you have a crap ton of knowledge. That alone on paper, you look like, should I say Alabama football?
No.
Or Kentucky basketball?
Roll Tide.
I mean,
Buddy.
you definitely don't look like the Tennessee Volunteers, because you're so much better than they
You
are.
look like the
pushing it,
Volunteers versus
right.
Missouri. Yeah.
They showed up for that one finally.
You're pushing it.
I mean, Zeke this year would say you look like the Georgia Bulldogs on paper.
Think so? That's pretty good.
I don't know. Those guys are strong this year.
Strong on defense for sure. We're going on offense, though.
How's
Totally
Tennessee
different
doing
ballgame there.
so far?
We're a basketball school, actually. We like to think of
Baseball.
ourselves
We're really good at baseball.
and basketball school.
Baseball.
The funny thing is Vandy is still the best baseball school in the SEC. So, like, how's Tennessee going to beat them?
Yeah. It doesn't really matter, because we're still better than you just because we exist.
I feel like I really hit Tatum low there. Yeah. Like he doesn't know how to respond.
Let me be.
His voice dropped there for a moment.
I'm trying not to cuss on this thing. I'm going to tell you, this is hard.
Just don't
It's
say
hard.
the F word. You could say anything else.
No,
we're
that's
like
my
Comedy
favorite.
Central.
That's my
It's his
favorite.
go-to.
It's my
It's
go-to. And
weird.
you're about to get
I find it immoral for people who kick 3-legged dogs and think they've done something good.
I know, seriously.
Making fun of Tennessee football at this point is about like kicking a 3-legged dog.
I
You should
remember
be
the
ashamed
text
of yourself.
messages. So, Jeff, you don't realize this, but the 3 of us are on a text chain. There
Be
has
lucky
been
you're not.
multiple.
Zeke, you too.
There has been multiple exchanges when Kentucky football loses.
Oh, you would like it more,
I've
though.
never, ever done
I
that.
poked the bear.
You should just-
I'll add Zeke to it if you
Well,
want.
let's just.
me to.
I tell you what. Let's make a bet now. We got a game coming up, I think.
You want to make a bet?
Oh yeah. What do you want to bet? I mean, what do you want to lose? Is better. I don't lose. You got to remember that.
You should lose that blue microphone
I don't
thing.
lose.
What do you want?
Orange and white overalls.
Checkerboard.
No shirt.
No shirt. Thank you. Yes.
I think you should paint yourself blue and do.
I'm not. Listen, what you say means nothing because it won't happen.
You're
So
going to paint yourself
let's focus
blue
on what I'm saying
and
here.
do the truffle shuffle on
No.
the Dad's Drinking Bourbon Instagram
Is that what it is?
in a
No.
reel
No.
that boomerangs back and forth so everybody sees those rolls.
I can't make that.
Wait,
Can't make
should
that
you
bet.
paint like his head in the blue and yellow, white checkerboard?
Oh yeah, the checkerboard that you actually lease permission to use from the University of Tennessee, right? You guys are so original. You know what I'm saying? You're so original. I'm not kidding you. Look it up. Well, that would require reading. I'm sorry, but ask somebody. You should ask somebody. You really should.
Preferably somebody outside of Kentucky because they are more likely to be able to read.
You want to call truce, or you want to make that bet?
So, Chris,
I'll
the other day
make whatever bet you want.
we were going to see my brother. He lives in Cincinnati, so we had to drive through
That
Kentucky.
state, yeah.
And so Tucker lost a tooth. I'm like, again, like every time we drive through Kentucky, he like loses a tooth. I'm not sure
Feels that it's appropriate.
what's going on there. If that's just happenstance or if it's going to keep
Supporting the
going.
community.
He's important.
Throw it out the window.
Win in Rome. You know what I'm saying?
That's my standard West Virginia joke is they invented a toothbrush because any other state would have called it a teeth brush.
I like that.
Is this what you expected, Jeff?
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, I like how
We had our moments.
I like how John says he's amazed at your patience. I'm like, you not remember the pick we did? We tied him up for 3.5 hours over 3 barrels, and he wouldn't say anything bad about any of them over and over and over. Just, well,
I think they needed me to keep the
if
ship
you're
afloat,
leaning
but-
toward this, I could see that.
No,
If you're leaning toward that, I could see it. And he'd tell us another story, and we'd all laugh. And, we're still not sure. Can you thieve a little more out of there? Sure, why not?
I got to tell you, you guys lucked out. Jeff is one of the best people to do barrel picks with. And there was one guy in our group. We talk about this all. The second barrel was not good. And he kept wanting the second barrel. There was only one guy out of 10 of us. And so we'd be like, yeah, we're going to blind taste 1 and 3. And then he's going up to Jeff's like, can you thieve 2 and just secretly blind them with it? And he's like, I'll do whatever you want. He just sat there, was so patient. So y'all lucked out. He is going to be great once it's time for company to do barrel picks. But let's talk about the company, and that's Company Distilling. How did the 3 of you get together?
In all seriousness, I think what it was is Jeff did touch on it in all sincerity. We all were at different distilleries. Jeff was obviously master distiller of Jack Daniels. I mean, what the hell, you know what I'm saying? And Heath was, had his distillery and I had one, and we all just we became friends. We found a commonality between us, even really if you think about the size of the distilleries from Heath to mine to Jack's to Jack with Jeff. And we found a lot of commonality, and we both, or all 3, believed in the, rising tide lifts all ships kind of thing. So, we just talked about it, and none of us had to do this. I think we say that a lot. Yeah. None of us had to do this at all. This was something that we wanted to do collectively and bring our expertise together. And it's not just the 3 of us. We're able to bring on an amazing team around us, our other partners, from sales distribution to, capital partner to everything. And so that's kind of how it came together, man. Just 6 years of friendship and trying to fight, to raise the industry.
Well, I'm sure it's a lot easier to have fun while you do it as well when there's 3 of you versus one person that's the the contact or the, hey, this is going wrong. What are you going to do to fix it right now? I know you don't have anything better to do, and I'm just going to bother you until it gets done kind of thing.
Yeah. I would just tell you, it's not a group for the thin-skinned.
No.
You need to have a little bit of hide.
Neither is Dad's drinking bourbon. So
it's going to work pretty well, isn't it?
Yeah, if you get your feelings hurt, we'll just thicken you up there a little bit. But, for me personally, I had spent almost 20 years at Jack Daniels, and I'd been master distiller for over 12 of those. And, I felt like it was a good run. Took the portfolio there from 3 products to 11, really opened that up a little bit. But at the same time, it was never the people of Lynchburg. I always loved them. I always loved going into work there. It was a beautiful place, really supportive cast. But I went through 5 different brand teams in 12 years, and I had begun to realize I was probably going to deal with 5 more brand teams if I stayed another 12. And with each brand team came a change of direction. You got to a point where you felt like you weren't, the master of your own future anymore. So for me, it was an opportunity to say, if the cuffs were off, and I understood that with all that I knew coming from Jack Daniels, I was going to have a supporting cast, just like Kris was talking about. I can't run a distillery by myself. I know what I'm good at, but I also know what I'm not good at. And I needed to bring people alongside me if we were going to do it and do it right. And our aspirations were greater than just whiskey. That's what I know. Kris and I, when we first started talking about doing something, it's like, we should really think beyond, sort of those first conversations is that, let's don't shoot low because we might hit it. Let's might as well shoot high. So we want to be the best of Tennessee, whatever that takes. And let's assemble a group of people that we think can achieve that. We knew Heath and, a great bourbon maker, but even greater gin maker, Ascot Ward to prove that. If we're going to do this and do it right, let's, assemble a talented group of people who are like-minded, who work well together. And we felt like we could, so let's do it.
One thing, though, that you touch on, and we just had Denny Potter on from Maker's Mark, and we were talking about the master distiller title, and he doesn't necessarily love it. We were kind of mentioning it's kind of more of an external title. Because when you're in the distillery, you're not walking around going, hey, I'm the master distiller. But At the same time, the master distiller does not do a whole lot of distilling.
Yeah.
With this venture for you, you talk about the brand teams, you talk about what's going on. This is more of an opportunity to still be the distiller, but get your hands dirty again, right?
Yeah, and I would say definitely didn't get my hands dirty that much simply because everything was so automated, at Jack Daniel's. But, unlike my predecessor who had gone largely into just an ambassador type role as master distiller, I was wired a little bit differently, and I understood that about myself. So when they asked me to step in and take his place when he retired, I told them I was not going to travel all the time, that I did not want to fully step away from production. So I spent 80% of my time. So you're right. Consumer-facing title, you were master distiller, but internally I was like AVP. I was director of distilling operations or whatever. So I never walked away from my production role there, which was important to me because I was an engineer. I wasn't someone who ever thought I'd be a spokesperson for a large brand like I became. But it was the time in Lynchburg around the process, working with the folks there, creating great products, working with the innovation team to plan what was coming, especially as the whiskey industry largely woke up. It was a sleepy industry for so long, for about 30 years, really. It was just brands kind of holding their own, fewer growing. Jack did because it was going into international markets, but around 2010, things changed. Rye started making a come around, and whiskey really got hot again, which was a fun time, to be at Jack Daniel's for sure. We opened up the portfolio. We tripled the number of products we offered and probably doubled in size in cases over that time frame.
Super impressive, right? And we've talked to Kris multiple times. We've talked to Heath multiple times. I would encourage people to go back and listen to our podcast with them to get a little bit of an understanding of what they did. But Kris, not only was he the president of the Tennessee Distillers Guild, but he also was one of the owners at Old Forge. They have some great moonshine. They source some whiskey. They made some very good gin. They have some rock and ryes that are really good. So diverse portfolio there. Besides Jeff coming from Jack, we all know what Jack's bringing to the table. Heath, you have your black and tan, which you're putting staves in some of the whiskey and making this really cool oatmeal stout type whiskey. You have a killer rye. You had a really good bourbon flying under the radar before, now not so much now that it wins awards. You have this crazy good gin. Some people would say that it somewhat has to do with the unique still that you have there. But the thing I want to ask all three of you is you all have this diverse background, yet you're all kind of doing the same thing. What was that conversation when you all got together? Was it, we want to do something different? We want to take what we've done before and this is how we think we can do it better? Walk me through that a little bit.
I don't think any of us, lack for confidence, even though we I think part of being able to give each other a hard time is understanding that, we've all been able to do a few things on our own and that helps have thicker skin. And so as we were talking, Kris has started, 3 distilleries. This is my second venture here. So the idea of starting a distillery or launching a brand, or a whiskey or a gin, wasn't particularly interesting to us, and it's been done. It was really like, let's launch a conglomerate. Let's launch the best of Tennessee. And so, we're launching, company Bourbon here in the next few weeks. We're going to have the gin rollout. We're going to have a vodka. We're going to have some fun flavors, and we're going to keep going over time. Like, it's not going to stop at company Bourbon. We're going to have different whiskeys that come out around that. And so knowing what we know about the spirits industry and knowing sort of our depth of expertise, we think we can, build products that appeal, some of them will appeal to broad swaths of the American consumer.
I'm not saying that y'all are confident on your own. It's almost like a marriage, like if you're whole and your partner's whole, you're better together.
Well, I think that to your point, the big thing for each of us in the conversations is we'd been a part of growing something bigger than us, than each of us as individuals or each of us as our individual companies, because we believed in that common goal. I go back to the guild, launching the guild in 2014, and subsequently Jeff representing, Jack Daniel's and doing a hell of a job making sure that the voice of the industry isn't lost by Jack's voice, so to speak, we put together some things that allow us to have opportunities, and really where we stubbed our toes on every level we've been down that path. And quite honestly, whenever when you've gone down that path and you know the path a little bit more, and we were able to pass some legislation, I think that was beneficial to existing distilleries as well as, newcomers. We never passed any legislation to keep competition away. If you look at it, when we had a piece of legislation to put revenue in place, it fought back an unfair tax or it gave opportunity to grow your business. And that was from
it was never
A to
protectionist.
Z. It was never protectionist at all.
Yeah.
And that's huge. I mean, I can remember many times Jeff, it's like, hey, this doesn't affect Jack. We're not going to do this, but we know it's good for the industry. We know it's good for you guys. So let's do it. And then it's kind of interesting because some of those things, next thing you know, Jack is sitting there going, hey, maybe we will do cocktails or maybe we will do this, you know. That's important.
One of the ways that the Tennessee Distillers Guild actually became founded was the first real issue that came through the state of Tennessee was driven by Jack Daniels, but it was trying to get a Tennessee whiskey law passed. And this was like with knowledge of what Kentucky had done. Bourbon is federally coded. You can make it at any state, but Kentucky had learned that people would try to rip off the Kentucky name who didn't even produce it there. So they had to come in at a state level and say, if you put Kentucky straight bourbon on your label, you must do these things to kind of protect the integrity of it.
They do that for horses too.
Yeah. When we were working on the Tennessee whiskey law, we began to realize that we started meeting in Nashville. We were talking about what was right to do. And then we began to realize this is only the first of probably many things that are going to come up where we need to talk to one another. We should not be fighting in the legislative halls with different agendas and stuff like that, because there's more that unites us than divides us. And I think we all understood that. But I think the arguments against the Tennessee whiskey law at the time were that it was anti-competition and anti-business. And there were 20 distilleries in the state at that time. Now there's 50? Most of the time when a state intervenes and basically tries to uphold quality, if that's what the laws are intended to do, to help the consumer better understand the product, things like that have happened with maple syrup and cheese and things like, where Wisconsin has laws around how cheese is made that you can't call it Wisconsin cheese unless it's made by a certain process, all these different varieties. What has that made Wisconsin cheese notable? It's like it's supposed to be the best cheese in the country, right? I feel like if it was meant to be any competition or protectionist, it certainly wasn't. I think it made Tennessee even more attractive.
Mm-hmm. Well, it didn't stop. You can still make bourbon. You can make whatever you want to in the state of Tennessee. You just can't call certain products Tennessee whiskey when they are not.
Right. But
and I think you can't undervalue what the guild has done. Mm-hmm. I mean, we could throw you, honestly, this is probably one of the best stories that have come of it, in my opinion. Of course, it's because we're a part of it. This came about. I mean, what we're doing, the history we're going to make is coming about because of, Tennessee Distillers Guild. Yeah. Plain and simple. And that's huge because I can tell you that KDA doesn't have that kind of history.
And some good investors, right?
Well, we have great partners, I mean, Kevin's a phenomenal partner. And it's not just, we say this all the time, it's not just about, a capital investment. I mean, the experience when you're sitting at a table with Kevin, the way his mind works. I mean, you guys can attest to this. The way his mind works and he thinks through things is amazing.
I think part of, Clayton being a part of Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett's philosophy, he's got more of the long view. He's not trying to make the next quarter. He's really thinking about the next years and win the big game. You can lose a battle if you're going to win the war kind of deal. And that's Kevin's mentality too. And I think we take a lot of comfort in that he understands that this is not a get rich quick scheme for us. This is just something we're committed to. And it's going to take years to build it into what it can become. And we just need a patient partner who understands the game.
I mean, he requires us to think in 5 and 10 year increments, not next quarter. I've been on that side of the coin where I've been, the capital partners who are on you. What'd you do this week? What'd you do this month? And it's brutal. And so, it's such a breath of fresh air for somebody to think, not just think long term, but actually allow you to plan for it. It's
especially on the whiskey side, because obviously it's not going to happen overnight. So anyone hey, that plan you had, how's it coming along?
Oh, look,
we'll let you know in about 36 months, maybe, if we think it's going the right way.
Yeah. One of the things that allowed us to sort of come together was, quite honestly, COVID, right? So kind of shut everything down. We all got a little space to think and reflect on who we wanted to be when we grew up. But, there's also that sort of question, like, who would you get COVID for? Who would you risk COVID for? Who are the people on that short list?
You're not on each other. Notice we're doing this way after vaccination, so you're not on that list. Just to let you know. I just want to make sure you're aware.
Didn't make the cut.
Is that a tear?
I got nothing.
It's a tear.
Sweat. Just lots of sweat.
But it allowed space to really think about how we wanted to approach this. And through that that time frame, the ability to think about long-term planning and goals were really important to this thing actually coalescing, and providing the space, just the 2 or 3 month letdown of intensity to be able to think about this. And so as we've tried to bring product to market, the COVID stuff's still with us. Like, we are fighting tooth and nail. Like, we've done this before, and we are fighting tooth and nail to get glass, to get deco. We're now 3 weeks late getting labels printed. That's the holdup in getting to market. I mean, so it is fighting and scrapping and pushing every inch of the way. Like, it is. Kris and I have asked each other several times, like, do you remember it being this hard? The first time we did this, and it wasn't. Like,
it's been an uphill push,
crazy
for sure.
So to be able to come through and build a business plan and execute it, and we've had delays that have been outside of our control, and it's great to have a capital partner who knew we were going to have the delays before we did, and he's been very patient and diligent with us.
And one thing I should mention, I am a real crappy host, because we're 30 minutes into this and we haven't really talked about what company is, because we've talked about there's going to be all these different types of spirits. We've talked about it's the three of you together, and y'all were going right where I wanted you to when I said a good investor, because I was at your press conference when you announced company Distilling. Kevin Clayton's nephew, along with Kevin, and the three of you are a part of it. And the interesting thing is that there's going to be a branch in Alcoa. You're going to have Heath, who has a branch over here in Middle Tennessee. But the main thing is that Townsend component, where y'all were talking about having a family-friendly distillery, someplace where you can go. There's biking, there's trails, everything that Townsend has to offer. The dream of company Distilling isn't just putting out good stuff. It's being a destination. And that's where, you talk about having a good investor. He's not only investing in this company, but he is investing in the city of Townsend and trying to make that area. I mean, it's already one of my favorite places in Tennessee, but that is a huge part of this as well.
It's even less about becoming a destination than it is providing a place for people to enjoy each other's company while they're out and about. Let's.
You mean just like gather around?
Gather around. Yeah. Sure. The Burgermaster is new and improved. You're gonna like what you see when we get up there.
They've upgraded. They're only Angus beef hamburgers now. Soft service.
That soft serve ice cream is great though.
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
we talk about Kevin and he's wonderful, but I think it takes more than money. I think you need to have vision, and I think clearly Kevin has that. He had a greater vision for what he wanted in Townsend, and he started to make pieces of that already come true. Taking Little Arrow and all the upgrades that he's done there. Top glamping resort in the U.S. last year by USA Today. Largely,
I voted for him.
Yeah, well, I did too. Because I've stayed in almost every format of accommodations they have there, and they're all fantastic. But this, mountain biking park, he just saw that as something that would draw people to the area where everyone would benefit, all the businesses. So, that was a pretty substantial investment to buy the land, to put the trails in. He's in a week, there'll be a bridge put in. All that's going to be free to the public, unless there's reasons why that has to change. He's expecting that to just literally make that a gift to the community as a draw to bring people to town. And hopefully the restaurants, the hotels, the campgrounds will all benefit by it being a magnet for people who want to ride bikes and do it on a world-class facility. But what he's done with Burgermaster and the tubing operation over there definitely upscaled that. And we're right there with them. So we bought land adjacent to all that. So we want to make Townsend into a wonderful place where you can make memories, where you can spend quality time with family, friends, and stuff like that. We just want to be a part of that.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about capital partners, and I think everybody's mind immediately goes to who capital partners from a money perspective. But I mean, the team that we have, and we have several other of our team members and founders that can't are not on this podcast, but we were able to go out and we're selecting the best company to do this with. Corey Clayton and Nathan Osborne, Kim Mitchell and Blunt Partnership are integral in this whole thing, big time. Kevin Smith joined from Jack Daniels. So you're talking about expertise in what they were doing before, and we brought on Jenna Wagner. She was a tourism director in Southwest Virginia, races
Previously
NASCAR.
Previously worked with NASCAR.
They're kind of like faster horses, just to help you understand.
I mean, when he said Kevin Smith,
Like one horse,
was really
plus
like
500.
You were hoping like
99.
Kevin Smith, like
Clerks, Kevin
Clerks,
Smith.
but no, I'm talking about somebody that's good at fermentation, beer. But in all seriousness, that group that you're talking about, those people were experts in their field. They didn't have to come. None of us had to come do this. You got to keep that in mind. None of us had to do this. Not the three of us. Not Kevin Clayton. Not Nathan. Not Corey. Not Kevin. None of those guys. We chose to do it. We chose to come together and
there's an industry standard alcohol textbook. Kevin actually authored the fermentation section of that, so he was considered to be sort of the best in the industry at understanding the science of fermentation, dealing with yeast cultures and stuff like that. And he decided to make the move with us, so we're very excited to have him join.
I mean, I get why the three of you came together. I don't understand why everybody came with you.
Have you seen me?
Like, why would they want to hang out with you?
That's a fair question. They don't want to hang out. They used to stay away.
I don't know, man. But
like, I get it. I get the three of you got together. You got a little crazy during COVID, but like, you're talking about all these other people saying like, I want to go hang out with Tatum. That's what I want to do today.
They were all drunk.
They're actually continuously
in a moment
drunk.
of weakness.
A moment of weakness, and we've continued to drug them accordingly.
We exploit their fears, anxiety.
That's what that moonshine's
That's
for.
what the moonshine.
Going back, Jeff, to what you were saying. So, bringing Kevin on, who wrote the book, your expertise, Heath's expertise. Right now, you're sourcing. Eventually, there is a plan to distill and have it all be your own juice, right?
Yeah. One of the things that I learned, I think a very good lesson at Jack Daniel's was the importance of a barrel. And getting that part of it right. It's all of your color. It's well over half of your flavor. And I think you can put a marginal liquid into a great barrel and salvage it. And you can put a great liquid in a bad barrel and you're done. I mean, it's just, it is really a largely overlooked part of it. Because you can spend all of the time getting all of your fermentation, distillation things right. And if your barrel doesn't perform, you're not going to be happy with it. So as we set out to kind of find partners, find liquid and stuff like that, it was largely meeting up with a guy that made barrels for me previously, who is now with Speyside up in Ohio, that he just happened to have. He had like an array of different toasts and chars, things that he was capable of producing, and had a liquid that was produced in the area that when Heath and I tried it, it was hands down. We agree. We looked at one another and it was like the flash of the obvious, we were like, oh my Lord, this is the best stuff we've tried. So that started a conversation. So we're already in a new make contract. And what was beautiful about this particular partner was that their equipment set is identical to what we plan to put in Alcoa. So it's going to be very easy for us to just lift it and move it in when the time comes. So we're already in a new make contract. And then the challenge was at that point, can we find something that's very similar, or can we take different liquids and basically get to a point where we think it matches the balance, the character, the complexity of what we liked about the liquid we chose.
And that isn't going to change too much once the new make comes of age, and then
Correct.
You end up doing your own thing.
Yeah, so similar grain structure, especially as you look at the way the bourbons that we put together for this first batch came in, weeded and maple finished. That'll be a common trait as we kind of go through. There might be some subtle things, but I would tell you this. I think if anything, years down the road, it's just going to get better.
Is the plan to age it more and more? What's the age on it right now?
The barrels that were in this first batch range from about 3.5 up to 5.
It's going to be hard with this stuff unless you source older stuff, but then you almost don't want to source too much older stuff because you know that your new make is going to be coming, and running stuff is tough, isn't it?
Well, we did. We actually kind of had that conversation because there's a big pile of old barrels out there, but the problem is they're not continuing to produce those, and once that finite set of barrels is gone, you're done if that's what you're basing yourself on. So I kind of worry about some brands that have firmly positioned themselves there, that if you're trying to maintain some consistency and produce year after year, you're going to have something that's more sustainable.
The market's
one little pile of barrels.
There's several.
Yeah, there's a lot of brands that I think have painted themselves in a corner with it.
It does seem, at least though, that most of the consumers now, as long as everyone's transparent,
absolutely
puts it out there. And,
Hell yeah.
You change your label. You say, hey, these came available.
Yeah.
They were too good to let somebody else buy them, but we're going to make sure this is a one-off, and in 6 months, what's in our bottle will be a different color. It'll be identifiable as not the same product.
Right.
And it definitely seems like consumers at least now, are more like, as long as it's good,
It really wasn't.
kind of warn us or tell us, we're really pretty
Truth,
good with
yeah.
it.
Well, transparency was key, but it was also more of a brand philosophy. And this is, a big thing I learned, which is it doesn't do us a lot of good as an early brand to launch a unicorn. It may be delicious, but there's not another one. And we don't want to get into this mode where people are chasing the next unicorn. Well, this barrel is great, but this next barrel, I don't know. We want to build a brand that, reflects our values. Jeff kept talking about this concept of approachable complexity. And so, sessionable whiskey, something you'll have more than one of if you so choose, but still has character and depth that's really good and smooth. And so when you get a 13-year-old barrel, it may be delicious, but you're not going to do that much with it. It's kind of baked, and so it didn't really fit the brand philosophy or growth strategy to do that.
What we wanted to launch at first was our flagship. A lane that we feel like we can own and build on and stuff like that. As far as, finding those things where you feel like you can do an interesting one-off and throw that in the mix to keep it interesting, certainly not opposed to doing that. But, but the brand's mantra, we needed to basically entrench ourselves in a certain level of character and components of what people would expect. If I pick up a bottle of company that looks like that, what should it be like? And to Heath's point, what I've learned is that there's things that people post about, super high rise and cast drinks, and they drink like one glass of that a week, and they pour through a whole bottle of something in the meanwhile. I want the bottle that they pour through. I don't really want that one glass a week or one glass a month, that people brag about. I just want something that people enjoy. If you only have one bottle in your cabinet, it doesn't matter if somebody's a new drinker, a mature drinker, where they are in that journey, you feel like you're confident you can serve that and it's going to satisfy everyone.
Well, it's the Monday through Thursday pour.
Yeah.
And there's so many things. I mean, I want to hear what you all have to say about everything. But the tough thing is there's so many cool barrels out there, but you almost lose your identity. And I say this to brands I've talked to. It's like, just because there's cool barrels out there, it doesn't mean you have to get every single one of them, because you're missing like what is the thing that keeps your lights on. And the thing that keeps your lights on is going to be the thing that Tito's is going to keep the lights on at the liquor store. It's not going to be 130 proof Jack Daniel's barrel proof. As great as it is, as much as Zeke and I like it, we don't drink enough of it to keep the lights on there. So I totally get your philosophy with that.
Zeke mod, but
Zeke's like,
Speak for yourself.
Zeke's like, he's talking.
One of these cabinets in this kitchen has only JDBP in it. I'll go that far.
I have a whole shelf that is just Jack Daniel's.
5 years to convince him to release that product. I thought that'd have been an easy sell, right?
So damn good, though.
Yeah.
Jesus.
I agree.
Once you actually have a tasting room, maybe then you say, hey, we got this opportunity for this really cool barrel, and it's going to be distillery only. Like,
You've not tasted this liquid yet. The amazing thing is,
while we've been sitting here,
you've been sipping on it a little bit.
A little bit.
You didn't speak up. So, but the thing that amazes me with this is that we went on these Easter egg hunts looking for liquid. The market's tight. We went to the usual suspects. We flew around. This whiskey's born of three components that you would recognize. And so
you can taste those three, and then you can taste the finished product, and you wouldn't think there's no trace identity there.
And so to know what Jeff pulled off and bringing this blend together and the ratios and where we got them, another element of our philosophy was we wanted to be unique. We wanted, to make a whiskey, not just sell a whiskey. And so, going to get the 13-year-old barrel pick that's already baked, well, you're not really doing much to it. You might filter it, cut it a little bit, and then you're done. Yeah. And so this really shows the range and skill of, with the Jeff Scott and being able to bring components together to form a great whiskey. I mean, it's I don't know how we tell the story more and more about how awesome these components are. If we had the three components here, you wouldn't either buy nor drink any of them. But this thing is fantastic.
Market-wise, it's funny to see what people chase down. Like I think age statements, folks still use them. They have some relevance, but I don't think they're anywhere near what they used to be.
Totally agree.
And you talk about having the daily drinker, not the high proofer that somebody has once and takes a picture of. Recently John and I were doing a blend with some folks, and we laughed because the rep kept asking us, "Well, do you want to know the proofs of any of these?" Like, no, we're just here to assimilate a great tasting product. Right. I don't care if it's 100 or 140. Yeah. If it tastes good, oh well. That's the least of my worries. And it ended up being a recurring theme. But his notion behind it was, well, that's what my retailers keep asking for the most is, well, what is the proof of it? Because that's going to matter. So, I mean, there's always going to be a moving target as far as, what people think the perception is good or why someone buys it. But I just think when you have like the backbone product that no matter what, it's just a good drinker. Well, that's going to keep selling tomorrow, next month, next year. When
We
all
came
the
up
ups
with-
and downs have fallen off.
We came up with 3 blends in a single barrel. And the funny thing was that the single barrel was the highest proof out of everything that we did.
I think that's the only reason the rep was happy, actually. Like, oh, man, the one y'all picked was the highest proof. Yes.
Proof
matters.
We're sitting here, Jenna comes to us from, tourism and regional tourism and racing, NASCAR, and, whiskey's is new to her. And so we're trying to go through the tasting notes of the bottle and how it's made and what it's made of. But then, the critical piece is, you can have all these details about whether it was sherped through the woods on the back of a polar bear and all that, what's the proof, all that stuff. And only like one person's going to care about that. And so in order to tell the story, you've got to be able to talk about the whiskey in language that the other 99% of the people care about.
Tune out on you.
Right. Yeah.
I have that problem with John a lot. He just starts talking, and I just like, well, it was good. I don't know what he said, but I liked what it was. I couldn't even tell you it was in the glass anymore.
What I will say is I always love doing the NASCAR analogy, though, with whiskey where, you have nose, taste, finish. And Zeke and I will say a lot of times, like, it was super solid in turns 1 and 2, but turn 3, it hit the wall, when you're talking about the finish. So, Jenny, you can use that one a lot.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the liquid.
Yeah, tell me what you did here. So we have one of our favorite things ever.
Yep.
Even though I wish the proof was a little bit higher when you originally
I'm going
made
to tell
this.
you. I'm going to tell you from a master distiller's perspective about that product.
And that is Jack Daniel's number 27 Gold.
So yeah, this was going from 3 products to 11. This was one of the products that we came out with during my 10 years master distiller. Was basically priced about, around $100. It was just below the Sinatra, which was the highest priced thing in the portfolio, but it was largely built for a developing Asia Pacific consumer. That's where its origins came from. That's hence the gold. A lot of it has sort of Asian influences in it. I would say they were people who were still learning to drink whiskey. They wanted to drink whiskey, but they weren't quite there yet. They were taking very expensive whiskey bottles and cutting them with tonics and stuff like that. So we wanted to basically put something there that was soft enough, interesting enough, complex enough where it could basically be drunk neat, hence 80 proof. So I think if I were to critique the product, 3 things I learned in doing the 27 Gold. The first one is I think that toasted maple is a really good idea. There's a level of character in the 27 Gold you don't see in other expressions of Jack Daniel's. It's sort of a unique wood, has its own sweet and finishing notes. Really, really nice what it adds to a mature whiskey. The second thing I learned is that maple barrels are a really terrible idea because they bleed at a rate of about 10 times what oak does. So if you go 6 months in a maple barrel, that's like 5 or 6 years in an oak barrel. You'll have the same equivalent angel share, so they bleed like a stuck pig. So the barrel is not a good idea, even though the toasted maple is. And I think the biggest thing I learned is what you said, is that for a lot of drinkers, 80 proof is just not enough. That was largely influenced by an Asian consumer who didn't have a tolerance for alcohol. The American consumer does. I guess idea of what I would do and leaving Jack Daniels. We started this conversation at the campfire at Grains and Grits. I was a month out from Jack Daniels. You're like, man, what you going to do? And we talked a little bit about the gold, and I said, yeah, I would like to reimagine that. Because
And you said, I can't tell you, but then Tatum walked by and you gave him a wink. And
But I just do that. That was just our thing.
Touche, John.
But no, seriously, it's like, one of the things I could do if I left Jack Daniels was basically fix what I thought maybe could have been better about it. And it's a great product, but was it optimal? Was there a way to do it in a way that was really, if you're swinging for the fences, you're going deep.
This was regular Jack mash bill.
Yep.
As well. So it's not even the weeded component. So that's another thing that you reimagined on.
If you follow the process along, it's the standard Old Number 7 recipe. It's been charcoal mellowed. It's gone into a toasted and charred oak barrel, fully matured there. It's been dropped back into a toasted maple barrel, and then it was mellowed on the backside of the second barrel. So it's double barreled and double mellowed. But like I said, the barrel's not a good idea for a lot of reasons. But toasted maple's beautiful, and you got to get the proof right. So in dealing with the maple wood, I've dealt with a lot of different woods for finishing beyond oak. And I thought maple was the one that was the most universally appealing. It's really nice. Plus, it's a Tennessee thing, right? You make maple charcoal. We weren't going to be charcoal mellowing our whiskey, but it was a way to introduce maple, which is sort of the one unique offering of Tennessee in the space, and doing a unique twist on it. I chose to go weeded because I had never worked with weeded grain bills at Jack Daniel's, so it sort of was like a different lane for me to run in. Why not? And I also understood being softer, not having the high rye content, meant that the maple's going to be a little bit more prominent on the palate. So, approachable complexity. Those were sort of the two words that I had. I want something that is good for the new drinker, satisfies the existing drinker, the mature drinker at the same time. I'd like to go head to head if you want to do it. I think the glass on your left is the 27 Gold.
You could tell
it's a little lighter
alone
color.
by the color.
Yeah, ours is much darker for sure.
I still laugh at color to a degree too. Like some folks get just real big on that. I mean, I've had folks just forever. I'm like, well, what the hell did it taste like? I mean, it's like looking at something in a window shop.
Yeah, it's the law of diminishing returns. Was it was 130 proof and opaque?
Which I'm glad
it must be good.
Which is probably almost as bad, but at the same time, it's just like, all right, let's just cut to the chase. What does it taste like? It's nitty gritty here.
I love when you go to a whiskey review and somebody's like, it's amber. And I'm like, no shit. Right? Like,
what I would tell people is, of course, you go up and I had machinery that could actually tell me exactly what the color was that was very precise. But just going and getting samples out of barrels in warehouses, I always say the whiskey's always going to be brown. The question is, what's the undercast of that? Is it yellow? Is it orange? Or is it red? Yellow, you're probably not quite there. Orange, you're getting close. If you're red, you're mature. This was what you would typically see in a single barrel, for sure. So you can kind of see this peaking orange to red in our liquid. Kind of sends a signal that it's mature. But I was really pleased with how it turned out. We chose 90 proof. For me, it's approachable. It's solid. It's still good for cocktail making. But for a new drinker, I think it kind of strikes the right balance of alcohol content.
Well, I wonder, too, how many people are trying to, as they get into it, coming in from the perspective of having neat pours a whole lot more, probably. I've never really tried to analyze a group of people or even just like a social event, but I think inevitably more people that are getting into whiskey now, they aren't doing it with the 2 rocks, in the rock glass and maybe a splash of water, this, that. They're trying to go at it neat. And, if you get a little too excited or go for that, high proof, cask strength, whatever, you're not used to it.
Right.
You just burn yourself. Yeah. You're like, well, do I hide it and suck it up and tell it it's what's supposed to taste like? That's good.
Yeah, I think, and y'all know from talking with me, my philosophy has always been your spirit should be good enough to be consumed neat at room temperature, like whatever you're doing. We're making spirits, not ingredients. And so that was a part of our flagship, 90 proof. And can you sip it neat? What are most people going to want to do? And if you don't like it as hot at 90, drop an ice cube in it. It's going to open up and be really nice.
I would say, obviously with the proof, and your proof is 90 proof opposed to the 80 proof of the 27, there is a little more sweetness in the 27, and it might just be because it was the whole maple cask. It might be that it was 80 proof. It might be a whole number of things, but
it's a lot of the Jack Daniel's yeast. Like their yeast culture really plays on the barrel in a certain distinct way that makes it a lot sweeter.
But I also think that there is a fullness in the company that is lacking in the 27. So when we sit there and say, and it's not necessarily the proof, right? Yeah. It's like when a certain distillery in Frankfort, Kentucky puts out a $2,000 bottle and the proof is 80. Yeah. And it's not a proof thing. It's just my heart goes down a little bit because it's like, this is going to be so expensive and I'm going to sip it and it's going to be thin.
Well, it was old juice too.
Yeah.
The older it is,
Don't.
The more you cut it, the worse it's just going to go to that.
It gets past its prime because all that wood, it comes out and it's not good. But it's almost like scrape your tongue, the tannins and stuff.
But it for me, it's 100% a mouthfeel. It's not even necessarily the proof. It's like you can have Four Roses, what is it, the nude label now? Yeah. But you can have the artist formerly known as Four Roses Yellow Label that is an 80 proof whiskey that is super thick. That's really what it comes down to. It's like I want something that I don't feel like I'm not drinking something. And this one, which is your straight bourbon finished with Maplewood, I totally get that. At least a full mouthfeel, the staves. I'm trying to figure out.
I thought it was sweeter than the 27, honestly.
I thought the 27 was sweeter, but this one was,
I feel the sugars sticking to the tongue better. I think that's what gives the finish. I was trying to not overly dissect it, but
dissect it. Let's hear it.
Or just be a little intelligent to the degree of, all right, why am I getting this like perception and feeling on the tongue? What's causing it to hold there? Things like that.
I feel like those are questions you ask yourself a lot, though. Like, why?
Are you wearing a hoodie?
Because it was like 60 degrees outside.
Didn't you grow up in Boston?
I did, but like this is my favorite
really
time
warm
of the
up there,
year
huh?
to just wear a hoodie.
Okay.
This is not a thick hoodie.
They make thin ones?
They do.
They're hoodies.
That's a hoodie.
Well,
It's a hoodie.
Well, one of the things that we brought that's really exclusive is we actually brought the full cast strength version of the liquid. Now, we're not planning on offering this to the public, but, I have tasted liquids at full cast strength that obviously needed to be cut down to 90, 80 proof, something less than full cast strength because they were just like pure heat. I mean, there's gasoline notes. So I would say that we're like out of necessity, they were reduced to a certain proof. I would tell you that we went to 90 by choice. I am completely confident at full cast strength. The one, that's 113.
Now you know why I brought a hoodie.
There's a 113.9 right
Well
there.
played.
So, the proof cut was by choice. It wasn't by necessity. I'm very confident if we went out at full cast strength that it's a winner there as well. And eventually, I think we'll get to that. Heath was talking about it. We want a flagship that kind of establishes us as a brand, and then we'll work to the edges from there.
Yeah, you got to have the baseline.
Got to. So this is what we intend to do is kind of get known for this. It's the one, just get one quality bottle. You can serve it in your company. And then for the aficionados out there who like, I want to see it full punch, everything you got. Some of the barrels obviously in ours came with like 110 entry proof, which was very beneficial to us as well.
You run into it too when you got the friend that comes over and like, you always talk about this bourbon stuff. Pour me something good. You pull 3 or 4, good ones out. Might be older bottles that are expensive, and then they're cash strength. Like, you got any
water?
got any ice or water or just a 90 proofer? Like I had a buddy from school in town a few months back, and I poured him some nice old stuff, some Willets and a few other things, and he starts looking in the cabinet. I'm like, that's something you need. I pour you whatever I have, man. I don't carry with my closest friends. Like, I just need something about 90 proof. You got like an Eagle Rare?
Well, I know you're a barrel proof guy. What do you think?
I like it, but like you said to begin with, it's not an even kilter kind of, I can just sit here and enjoy this. And John and I, one of the few times we've actually probably aligned over the years now is we've kind of hit a wave together where it's like, I enjoy full flavored. I really do. I love sitting there and working it and getting everything I can. I haven't taken notes.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do it for 4 hours. I want to watch TV or play on my phone or do something else. And I don't need something that's too much to distract me or overly engage me. I just want a nice, sweet, easy profile. I'm not going to get reflux later. It's going to go great with whatever I want to have for supper. And I can just sit there and enjoy it thoroughly. And that's really where both of us have gone, almost like I wouldn't say regression, but we certainly appreciate 9 to 100 way more than we used to.
It's the mouthfeel I talked about with you, but it's also fatigue of doing a podcast for 5 years where I'm sure, you all feel it in the brands. You're tasting the same thing over and over. And at the same time, you're like, I don't want to think. It's the reason why sometimes I'm opening a door with Tatum right now, but sometimes I like to play Bejeweled because I don't have to think about anything when I'm moving these stupid diamonds around.
That's fantastic.
It's not surprising about you.
But I tell you what, I know for a fact you haven't tasted anything like this liquid because it doesn't exist in the market outside of those bottles. Because we went to if you knew where we went and looked for Easter eggs, there's a MGP component to it, but then the other two, you're never.
So how long was the maple in there?
We're still trying to figure out exactly how long it's going to take. I would tell you when the whiskey's hot, like it was when we started the finishing process, I think a month or two gets it done. You almost don't want to overdo it, but we're establishing sort of the tasting standards for it. It'll be a taste test more than a time test, but we'll have to figure out. We haven't put it through its paces yet, to be quite honest, but we'll have to run it through the seasons.
That definitely seems to be kind of blending's one caveat and skill that you really have to learn over time. But as far as finishing, at least from what, we can see and talking to people, it's very dependent, obviously, weather conditions like that, but then also just the product, because some things will come out and we'll give it 6 months like the other 2 things we did. One of those took on way too much. One was pretty good, and this one I barely got a hint out of. You could have gone another 6.
Yep.
It's just like I think it's
there's not a magic recipe.
I think
with
it's
this
much more.
base. It's much more
Maybe not
sensory.
labor intensive, but at least attention, and you've got to be there pulling. Like, all right, every week we go pull this. Why?
Yeah,
we'll just see where it is.
We pulled every 2 weeks until we kind of had gotten to that point where we're like, we think we're ready. Let's pull the trigger.
And it's almost like because I feel like staves, it's tougher than an actual cask because I've just had, and maybe it's some of the other stave brands I've tasted, almost taste artificially sweet. And when I say that, I'm not necessarily getting this with yours, but I think that's the difficulty is how do you put it in there? So it's almost like you try it every 2 weeks, and then there's a certain point where it's like, all right, now we got to move daily. Because when that turns, the second it turns, it's like, it's not the same thing anymore.
Well, that artificial is just too much of a compliment to me. Like it doesn't support it; it dominates it, and then you've got a flavor with a kicker on the side of whiskey. Like that's not where it needs to go to have the synergy.
Of course, I didn't have, big tanks or anything to work with to kind of build this model out. So, I literally started with mason jars in my kitchen at home. We should have gotten that on camera.
Yeah, we should have got that.
But, trying to decide there, what is the right component makeup for the recipe and then how to finish and how long and at what level. I was stunned, really, at how well going to thousands of gallons in this first batch. We were able to predict how, out of a pint jar, where this thing was headed.
I'll tell you what, that blew me away.
That scared the living daylights out of me.
No, because
it's the same percent, same proportion. We're doing the same thing. Well, you also went from if micros, the right kind of word, scale to
I didn't want my partners to know it, but I was waking up with cold sweats at night when we were in those final days.
It's okay. I was sweating with you. It's okay.
I'm still sweating. We need labels. We need labels printed.
I was there the day that we had the batch finally prepared, getting it ready for bottles that should soon be there. So literally the liquid you're trying right now is the finished liquid. It's not a mock-up, but I was there tasting it. It was like ding, ding, ding. We got a winner. Winner, chicken dinner, guys.
It was better when I didn't talk over you and you said it the first time.
Look, there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. And I think part of confidence knows that, you could be wrong,
Well,
but this, what's crazy is Jeff's not even telling the whole story on the mad scientist stuff. Like you go into the man cave, which is his sort of garage down in Tullahoma, and it's like a Breaking Bad scene. There's got jars everywhere, and they're labeled with what's in there, what the wood finish is, percentages of the components, and we've tasted through these things a bunch of times, and I will tell you it is remarkable how close to the model this came out.
Yeah,
it's pretty spot on.
It's kind of scary, actually. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I like the nose, and Zeke, I'm interested what you think, because the nose for me on this literally takes me to Grains and Grits.
Yeah.
Because it's that campfire.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny, like going back to origin stories, but it's that campfire maple with whiskey, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's very much a fall pour.
Speaking of Grains and Grits, does it bring back raccoons or bears? Okay.
Bears. It definitely has that campfire aspect to it.
To me, the toasting process is interesting because it accomplishes such different things than charring does. You have to use time and heat and not live fire to accomplish it. So it's always, my best analogy was always, you think about a marshmallow and there's that impatient approach where you just stick it in there, let it catch fire, pull it back and blow it out. And it's going to add complexity to the sugars of the marshmallow, but they're going to be largely bitter, semi-bitter in flavor. But if you'll take that slow, patient approach in the heat of the fire, slowly turn it and brown it, most people would say that's desirable. And that's what you're doing to the maple here. So you're kind of catching that sort of above the fire marshmallow toast on the wood here.
That is the opposite of the Sandlot method.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the singe the hair on your knuckles, slow, patient approach that Kris is not the most patient guy on the planet, but so we'll actually toast his marshmallows for him.
Yes, Kris, so you have to absolutely toast him for me.
He'll walk away all frustrated.
That's not because he's impatient. That's because we're afraid he's going to set himself on fire.
Kris is there like, listen, Arnett, this is how you do it. First, you take the gram. Then you put the chocolate on the gram.
I do love the toasting marshmallow as a tasting analogy.
So good.
It is.
Because it is. You can just see the layers with your eyes, and when you taste it, I think that's one of the best sensory, experiments you could do for people. And I've never thought about it. It would probably go great with a bourbon tasting or like educational type thing of like, well,
try it this way.
Here's the different levels of toast and char, and here's what you're tasting and what it really does or is.
Yeah, this is not meant to be that burnt marshmallow. This is the slow, patient, toasted.
You guys could get like a little thing, like one of those little mini fire pits you put on the stage. You know, like how they have those at restaurants for desserts.
Little rotisserie.
No, it's like they put this little ceramic thing on your table, and they give you skewers and marshmallows.
Fondue it.
Yeah, like a melting pot.
Yeah. You could actually have a little fire there, and you could be like, "This is how Tatum cooks his marshmallows," and then put it right in. And here's how Jeff does it.
For Tatum's, we'd have to have like a blowtorch. just set it on
no
fire.
patience.
Yep.
No.
So Zeke, you always give very creative and tasting notes. So I need to hear some Zeke.
I like the balance very well. Again, I think the biggest kicker for me with anything that has a finish or an extra component to it is I would always prefer it to be the supporting cast. And, like you alluded to earlier, rising tides help everything. I think a finish should do that. And it should just complement the product, not mask, dominate, or try to fleece anybody over for probably a lack of better or bad words. And I think that's where this falls, is it is completely just supporting cast. It helps move it up. I think it's interesting, too, with the wheated mash bill, at least from what we try to halfway figure out or learn. The wheat normally is more of either a catalyst or just not inert, but it doesn't put out as much of a pronounced flavor, whereas it'll help other things that are in there, whether it's good or bad, help in that kind of sense.
I call it dry Cheerios.
And so I feel like that's where the relationship comes in of the finish with the maple, is it helps that wheat that's probably not ripe enough yet, if it was on its own, to have gotten, well, if it's in the right barrel, have gotten the right kind of characteristics and flavors and nutrients from the wood, but it also allows it to not hinder it as well. It helps it, I guess, put its best foot forward.
Yeah. Well, and I would tell you, I liked maple, like I said, because I had experimented with it before in the 27 Gold, but I also thought wheat it worked well with it. I think we're probably going to look to things that include rye with different wood grain bills. We may even look at malts at some point.
It's Pandora's box. I mean, who knows which wood or finishing process goes best with this or that grain? And then
that's exactly it. Yeah. We're going to pair the distillate with the correct wood finish.
Then you're not going to sleep for a month.
Yeah. This is the one that was really costing me, some sleep. Sure. I think getting the first one out and feeling like the model is solid, because I was able to reproduce it multiple times on small scale, so I knew it was reproducible there. The question was, is there scale up error?
Right.
And I always had some intermediate steps I could take when I had a lot of tanks to work from. This one I had to pretty much commit to go from small scale to really large scale. But even still, I mean, it was a couple hundred barrels on this first batch, and but I was personally pleased with how it turned out. It was pretty much right on target of what I hoped it would be. So I hope people enjoy it. It's certainly what I like, if not what they like. I would say everybody had input. I think we went through multiple iterations of different ways those components could come together, the way the finish would work. We just looked to basically, we have new drinkers in the group. We have some fairly mature drinkers in the group.
We have people that drink but aren't mature.
We have some old people that aren't very mature in the group.
That'd be me. So we're clear. It's not on TV, but I just want to make sure we're clear.
But, clearly what we were looking for is something that we thought had the most appeal across the whole group of people,
Well, I think it's, maybe even laugh at myself and saying the word think, but it's where you can easily overthink it or put too much into it, and then you just kind of run yourself into a rut. But, I mean, how long's whiskey been around?
A while.
How long was it right around that 9 to 100 mark for forever? Yeah. Yes, right now, do people love cask strength? Yeah. To a degree,
yeah,
yes.
But cask strength used to be 100, maybe 105.
But they can't be drinking it all night, or they're not functioning.
Yeah. But I tell you, it goes back to philosophy about sessionability and approachable complexity. Like, we weren't trying to make a unicorn, right? So it was easier not to get down that or go down that rabbit hole of, is this the best ever? Is this the magic barrel? Because it wasn't trying to make one single barrel of the greatest single barrel of whiskey there was ever made. It was like, let's make a blend that is going to be great, every day of the week, not just for your one-off pour.
I'm interested, Jeff, especially coming off what you have come off of, and this is your first kind of venturing out into your own. How much did you labor over it before you finally put that stamp on it and said, okay, this is it, I'm done?
I probably spent, I want to say about 6-8 months.
But like when you got there, did you know you got there right away? Or was it something where you're like, I want to tinker with this a little bit more, I'm going to come back to this? Or like, were you pretty confident once you got there? You're like, boom, that's it.
I sorted through a lot of different liquids that had different, grain anatomies and stuff like that. As I got to some that, the wheats are a little bit more of an oddball out there. If we're being honest, they're not as readily identifiable and stuff like that. Not as many brands leaning on them. That was attractive to me. And I actually like the fact that if you look at the wheated subset of bourbons out there today, a lot of them are more premium in nature. You got Pappy and Weller and Maker's Mark and Maker's 46. You've got basically this smaller, most of them include rye, but the ones that do include wheat tend to be upper shelf. In nature. And I'm like, I like that because I didn't leave Jack to make cheap whiskey. That was the first thing, it's like, I really want this to be nice. I want to take the best stuff from where I came from, put it on the table. Can I go toe to toe with my old place? That's what I want. I felt like this hit the mark. So I was, like I said, very pleased with it, but I knew I needed something that was a little bit soft because I wanted the maple to shine. Because, if the whiskey has a ton of character, then you almost have to overdo the wood for it to have any relevance at all. I didn't want that. I wanted it to still be approachable. I wanted there to be some complexity, some interest to it, but having the softer nature of wheat in play allowed the maple to really shine without being overbearing. And it was trying to strike that balance. But what I set out to do, I believe this bottle perfectly represents that. But we've got many more things we want to do.
How much is this going to come out for?
Based on, we're going to be going into Tennessee and then into Georgia shortly thereafter. We're pricing it into distribution. We don't really control retail, but it's got a suggested retail of about $59.99 is what we're thinking it will be, which definitely puts it in the premium end of the shelf. But, the bottle we tasted tonight, I've got the receipt on it, $130 with tax. So, if you're comparing it to that, it's a value.
I totally understand that. But the other thing is, what is the plan? So you talked about the 5-year plan. You talked about that kind of stuff. You want to get that 90 proofer out as far and wide as you can. So what is the plan? How many states does it need to be in before you introduce that cast strength SKU? If you do that, is there a plan there where it's like, all right, if we hit a certain amount of distribution, is it number of cases where you're pulling levers? Is it number of states?
It's probably, the way it would used to be, all those questions there would have been answers to them, and that would have, created this matrix of when we do it. But really, we are really going to have to think a lot about the whole raw material, the supply chain, because
it's such a mess. We're
going to have to maximize those dollars as we do this. So if right now, Tennessee, we want to win home. That's our goal, is to win home. We want to win Tennessee. So Tennessee and Georgia, we have a great partner in Empire Distributing. They also have Colorado, so that would be an easy go-to, if you will. And then we've identified, because of where we're at in Townsend, there's a core 8 to 14 states that visit that region a lot. And so, we talked about that. It's a perfect example, or a perfect way to market it without marketing it intentionally, because those people are coming from Ohio and everything else. So that's going to be big for us. So we're going to rely a lot on data. Jeff has a lot of data in his mind, but also in his taste and everything else. And then from a distribution, it'll be a lot of data as well, as far as, who's buying it, where they buying it from, and that kind of deal. But the biggest thing is supply chain. It's huge.
So you're going to rely on that iPad when people come to the distillery and sign our guest book. Where'd you come from?
Not necessarily.
No, it's not a matter of...
Not necessarily.
I was kidding.
I actually already have a lot of data on the U.S. and where brown spirits are most consumed. So we kind of know what
we know where we want to go.
No, I just wanted
I would say it's going to have to be controlled growth for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be controlled.
We don't want to put so much in distribution that we don't have enough bottles to even cover our own shelves. We want to actually have accommodating facilities where people can come and know for sure that they're going to be able to pick up a bottle if they come there, that will be the reward for making the trip to come see us. So we want Townsend and Thompson Station and Alcoa to have a healthy package store, and these things like cast strength may be introduced there in small quantities and stuff like that. So we can start to test the waters there. We want to create some tasting flights. We may do some different grain bills and different wood finishes that you'll only see in-house. And we're going to use that almost as market research based on what people, how they respond to it. We can figure out, what is the next variant? What should be our second whiskey, our third, our fourth? To Kris's point, Townsend, from that one location, we're going to see, I think about 14 million people if we can get people to come out of the park in our direction. That's about how many people visited there last year. And they come from a lot of different states. So if we're only going to be in Tennessee, at least we're getting exposure, visibility to a lot of different states because the park draws so many guests from the eastern half of the United States.
And, just being associated with the Tennessee whiskey in and of itself is the biggest, great marketing point for us. I mean, you and I have joked, but we've also talked serious about just the order of magnitude that Tennessee whiskey and the tourism aspect that brings and how many people visit our trail versus any other trails that are around, And so we're fortunate to be on that and continue to maximize those marketing opportunities.
I say this with peace and love to our friends out in East Tennessee because we have a lot of friends out there. I think it is going to be a game changer having more of a traditional distillery out there than, yes, are there stills out there? It's
largely moonshine, yeah.
Are there stills? Are there people doing whiskey out there? Heck yeah. But is there a place that you can actually go and tour and have it be like a traditional distillery? No.
Right. Barrels rigged up in warehouses and the full money of what you get from a big distiller. You'll have that at Alcoa.
And that'll be something that'll be I think you're still going to have some barrels in Townsend, right? With the rendering that I saw, or no?
We may have some there just for
small scale.
I think you got to just for aesthetics.
Well, if we want to bring something in and do it at cast strength, you may see a barrel come in where we're basically just going through the filtering and cutting processes on it. But, Townsend, I think one of the reasons why you've never seen the distillery go to Townsend is that there's no natural gas and there's no municipal sewer. So you're going to basically work off of electricity and a septic tank.
Yeah.
So that really limits. I mean, we couldn't build a global brand out of Townsend, even though it's one of the most beautiful spots in the state of Tennessee.
All right, you just got to take empty barrels and then just put it in the distillery. So
styrofoam, styrofoam
start
barrels.
A new company, and it's going to be barrel floating down the little river instead of tubes.
People would pay for that.
Go over the dam down there.
He's joking. Let's don't start that rumor, please.
I think it'd be a great idea. I mean, they do it at Niagara Falls, right?
Niagara Falls.
So why can't we do that?
Get a barrel.
If the Canadians can do it, we can do it.
You know what I would love is the time that I go with you and get in the barrel and then it just sinks to the bottom.
You getting in the barrel would be a challenge as well, but that's a different conversation.
Get one of those big, full, wine barrels or hogsheads.
As long as I had a hoodie, I'd have some padding.
Sherry barrels or something.
A hoodie.
We put John in the Solera barrel.
The Solera, that's right. That's pretty good.
I will say, so now that you've got this first batch out of the way, are you able to focus more on the new truck edition you picked up, the C10, or is it still getting neglected?
No, if I had not gotten into distilling, I wanted to work in cars. That I ended up getting an engineering degree, hoping to work in the automotive field. So that's still a passion of mine. And I have a 1974 C10 pickup. That's I just put a blueprint 496 in it that dynoed at 601. So it's a little scary to drive that. Doesn't have any air conditioning, so I didn't drive it much through the summer because I don't do well with black vinyl when it's 90 degrees out. Yeah, I can sweat like John over there.
It's just hard to peel yourself back off.
Yeah, it is.
But,
I just actually put the serpentine accessory drive on it and added a compressor, so I'm going to put air conditioning on it. I got to get it ready for Pigeon Forge and all those car shows over there, right?
Zeke actually has not been following Mr. Arnett on Instagram because if you did, you would know that this man just got his contractor's license.
Got that written down number 2 on my question, son.
Oh, you did. Congratulations.
I actually don't have my license yet. But what's required to get your license is to pass 2 tests. So I did actually do that part. So the business law and the builder's part of the test I passed. And,
congratulations.
So we're actually going to set up a construction wing, I guess, under company. And this, because Alcoa is about a 31-acre property, so we've actually lined up a GC to handle the building of the distillery. But there's like little small things around the property we'll want to do. And this way we won't have to wait, and standing in line for somebody to come out. I can pull permits. We can work with subs, build a music stage, all the other things that we kind of plan to do on the property. So it'll just simplify
bridges,
some of the small
zip
projects.
lines.
Yeah.
Well, you're empty nesting now too, right?
Well, my daughter's still at home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my son's at Huntsville. So he's a sophomore in college there. And my daughter, we're still in Tullahoma. We decided not to move to East Tennessee until she graduates from Tullahoma, which will happen next summer.
And then
But she's excited. She's actually on fall break, so she's going to visit ETSU, and she's thinking that's where she wants to go to school. So she's going to end up going to Johnson City. And we're excited that she wants to stay close to us over in East Tennessee. We'll be moving there soon enough.
Well, it's gorgeous out there.
It is.
So we know what's going on with Mr. Arnett. Nobody cares about Tatum, but Heath, I'm curious about you. Are you still going to be lawyering?
I don't know if you ever get over it. I'm going to certainly maintain my law license, but I've been working 2 or 3 full-time jobs for about 10 years now, and so it's time to only work on one.
I just want to know if you had any new botanicals that were going to be going in any gins coming up.
I've got some ideas.
That stuff John talks about.
I've got some ideas.
You're going to be able to focus at the end of this year. H. Clark will be no more as of 12/31, right? And then it will all be company, or is there a different cutover date?
That's roughly the timeline. Whether it occurs on 12/31 or 1/31, we'll see. But we're going to roll over. About the time that Townsend opens, we're going to rebrand and then be off to the races that way.
I am interested in Mr. Tatum as well, because what I will say is since company has started, typically you would call Kris Tatum and he'd either pick up and say, hey, let me call you right back, or you would text, I'm in a meeting, let me call you back later. And then like 5 days would pass and you would call back. I will say that you have been much more accessible. So are you still doing side gigs as well, or is this
No,
it now?
Man, this is it. We've got enough on our plate as it is. I mean, it's not a small feat. I mean, you think about it, we're about to, as he said, we're going to rebrand, relaunch Thompson Station. We have Townsend open in February, March. Right on the heels of that, you're going to have Alcoa. We're excited. We're working on a 4th location already. And we have several municipalities across the state reaching out. This is a brand that can go elsewhere and still be successful. So we have our hands full collectively.
Well, and being obviously a large presence in East Tennessee, and I think most folks do laugh, but SKUs and sales wise, Moonshine over there crushes it.
Yeah, it does.
Are you going to be launching any of those?
I think we're gonna. It's natural for us to have some. There's a history. There's a huge history.
Yeah.
It's actually how we came up with the name of our what we've referred to as Fun Flavors. And so there will not be a mason jar in the building. We've all agreed on that.
Yep.
And you know what? Big props.
I call it sophisticated shine. But we're gonna have a high end line of flavored spirit.
Listen,
look at the numbers.
here's the
Cash
thing.
speaks, right?
I know the numbers, and big props to Sugarlands and Old Forge and Old Smoky and all the guys over there doing Old Tennessee. All those guys, they're still growing year over year.
They're killing it.
So it's not like they're flat and they're just riding it out. We'll have some, like Heath and even Jeff talked about, we're going to have a variety of lines there in Townsend. It's going to kind of be what'd you call it, like an experimental spot for us a little bit. Mm-hmm. Cocktails will be a big focus for us. That's a big focus for us overall. Whereas this is definitely more, a neat or
I think in the sense of, bourbon and whiskey, folks obviously laugh and poke at it, but then you say, well, let me tell you how much that put into our pocket last year.
That's exactly what I would do, Zeke.
Oh, wow. Where do I sign up to get some of those going out the door?
Well, look,
our approach to those is going to be a little bit different. We want them, we need them. People are going to buy them. We understand that. But to go a little bit higher in alcohol, to drop the sugars down, to use all natural ingredients, to be more cocktail focused with what we offer there, where it's like grab that bottle and these 2 bottles together, or take that bottle and cranberry or whatever, and something that people can take back to the campgrounds. That's easy. For them to make cocktails back in their camps. We want to do that. But it's not a distribution strategy for us. I think that's kind of what we've all kind of decided that pipeline is full. Nobody's looking for 31 flavors of your brand to put in a store somewhere.
Don't knock the mason jars now, because the way the glass is, you might actually need
mason jars. Hell, are you telling me we're going to
you can't even get mason jars.
Bags.
Yeah. I told you I was doing batching in my kitchen in mason jars. That was until Walmart sold out of mason jars. I mean, you couldn't even get them there.
Yeah. I'll tell you, to your point though, about the financial success of spirits overall. I mean, we were fortunate that we looked up when we started talking about this, and then finally made the decision. Jeff left Jack. I sold out of what I was doing, and we looked up and we're like, damn, we've done a lot of work legislatively, and these laws, they kind of benefit a new guy, So you like,
and that didn't weigh on our decisions at all. It was the request of other people saying we need this, and we were like, well, it doesn't really harm anyone, so let's figure out what's fair to allow everyone to do, and we'll just go forward and get that passed. And then all of a sudden, once we got it together, it's like, that thing we did a few years ago, we're really going to like that.
Yeah.
That new law is really going to help.
But it's a matter of that. I mean, we listen to that guild is led by industry members. I mean, that's the bottom line. You got to have that DSP to be in that room. And we agreed, almost over 7 years ago that we're going to, fight it out in that room as brothers and sisters, and we have each other's back and trust each other, and we'll let the marketing teams cut and dig on each other. But what came of that is requests of how do we were always asking the question, what can we do to make your distillery more successful? How can we make this industry more successful? And you look up a couple of years later and you've got a very, business friendly legislative scheme that bodes well for entry into the industry, of course, field.
Of course, we were all on the board together, so we actually hired a facilitator to come in and kind of talk us through some priority and goal setting, mission statements and stuff. We came up with a 5-year plan, completely crushed it all like in 18, 24 months. We had to call them back in and like, okay,
we need something else to do.
We've done all that stuff. We thought it was going to take us 5 years to get it done. Within 2 years, we had it completely crushed. So we had to go back to our membership and say, okay, the things that we thought we weren't going to be able to get done, we've got them done. So what's next? What's the low-hanging fruit? What would help the most of our membership? And let's start sorting through that, put together priorities, and go hit it again.
Yeah, you got to remember, we're still young. I mean, we launched in March of 14, 13 of us, and Jack and George weren't even, a part of it. And luckily, they did come along. But at this last ADI, they do like a ranking of basically the business friendly aspects and legislative quote power or legislative influence or legislative friendly aspects of a state. And 6 years ago, we couldn't spell legislative probably, and so, but we're widely considered a top 3 in the U.S. when it comes to the,
now we'll say we've
influence.
accomplished a lot. We've got a couple big fights left to go. We still have some artifacts of this, just stupid legislative scheme that came out of Prohibition that are, just patently unfair. We've been able to beat back most of the big issues, but there's still some big ones that we need to address, and we plan on doing that.
And we got to continue to lead. I mean, and we will, and we do. We lead as an industry. Yeah. Kentucky's a good second place team. I think they got a cute little trail up there.
Well, what I like about it, and I tell people this too, like I also say,
they're kind of like the paved trail to like the sort of trickle of a waterfall.
I'm going to say something serious. I'm going to say, if you think about Tennessee and Kentucky, Kentucky's ahead because Prohibition ended earlier in Kentucky. When you look at those distilleries.
Well, not just ended earlier, it started later.
Yeah.
So Tennessee went into Prohibition 10 years ahead of Kentucky.
And stayed 5 years longer.
And so all the distilleries moved to Kentucky before Volstead.
And St. Louis.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying where Tennessee is, if you think about it, it's behind, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. You think about the things about Kentucky that everybody loved was Booker and Elmer and all those folks getting together.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Kentucky Fried Turkey, but the things people were nostalgic for is, Jimmy and Elmer and everybody, Booker. That's where Tennessee is. And people are going to be like, hey, remember when Jeff and Tim were sitting by a fire and they were talking about stuff and then they decided they should do something together or whatever it is. Like, these are things where the folks in Tennessee, and that's why I love Grains and Grits so much. It's like the folks in Tennessee are getting together and they're really collabing that way. Kentucky has those big conglomerates that are in there. Not saying we don't have some here in Tennessee, but there's not as much as what's going on there. So this is, when people come back and look at what's going on in Tennessee, it's like, this is the golden age. Those years in Kentucky everybody was nostalgic for, they're going to look back and be like, hey, remember that like 2020 to 2035 stretch in Tennessee.
We're just hitting it. We've got some really good whiskey coming out from some of our members. Kent Merritt with Old Tennessee. He's got a fantastic Tennessee whiskey coming out. What stuff that Old Dominic's doing, our friends in Chattanooga. We've got some, I mean, the next 5 years are going to be really magical.
I can tell that the last Grains and Grits, when I tried some of their newest stuff, I was super impressed.
Yeah. Zeke and I just picked a barrel couple Sundays ago that'll be out in Tennessee sometime in November. So
folks enjoy it too, like a hands-on approach, which once you get so big, you just can't do it anymore. I mean, it's not possible, but they stop in at the gift shop or whatever. Hey, so-and-so, they were just hanging out.
Yeah.
I got to say hi, shoot the shit with them for 3 minutes, keep going.
We're young in a lot of areas, as far as the age or the time that we've been around. But I mean, the sheer numbers, what you're talking about, Zeke, people eat that up. And they will. I mean, I'm going to hit you with it. I mean, 6.5+ million people visit the Tennessee Whiskey Trail a year. And what was
million and a half?
It's really easy when you go to Gatlinburg and there's 18 distilleries right in the same place too.
I get it. The numbers don't lie, bro.
Yeah, numbers don't lie.
That's the only thing you can say that. Look at Nashville.
But
And it's only 3 distilleries. Obviously, never mind, you're from Kentucky, but
you have to plan it out when you go to Kentucky. It's like, how many can I go to in one day?
Jeff says it best.
You were telling. I'm going to give Kentucky some props here. Clearly, I will. They've got bourbon and horses. Tennessee has everything else
and basketball.
But when we were forming the guild, one of the things that we thought is that, and being part of the guild, we were working with state agencies and things of that nature. And we're like, hey, we don't want to talk bad about one another. We don't want labels that people would find offensive. We basically said we should create some standards by which if you join this guild, you're agreeing to kind of follow these guidelines. So I reached out to the KDA and basically said, y'all, would you share with us your code of ethics? And it's like, we don't have one. Yeah. And the response was, but we should have.
We should have.
It would have saved us a lot of heartache over the years because there's been a lot of infighting about, where the lines of decency are drawn. And that's one thing we really haven't fought that much in Tennessee. We had maybe one distillery.
We've had 2. So,
that we basically
when that came up, I ended up pulling that document together and working through it. And in broad strokes, don't be stupid, don't sell to kids, no sexually explicit or offensive stuff. We've had 2 members that we've had to take action on over, branding and that sort of thing. And I'm proud of that. And I think, we want places where everybody feels welcome. We shouldn't celebrate certain, repugnant parts of our history and culture.
Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name.
That's right. Do you know what, Chris? I just remember the first thing that,
please,
one of the reasons I like John.
This guy.
I know.
So when I first met John, he was like, 2 things you should see when you're in Kentucky. And I was like, what's that? And he said, Nashville and Indianapolis.
I will just say, y'all are a great company. This whiskey is I like it very much. I do.
It just gets better and better, doesn't it?
I do like this whiskey a lot. Zeke, what's your final verdict?
I'm the same, and I think, especially as an entry product, like you all alluded to, you don't want to be too bold. You don't want to go too far in one direction. I always equate things back to just simply first impressions are the most important. Middle of the road is great for a first impression. It gets your foot in the door. It keeps everything going. You don't piss anybody off. Like, how hard is that to do in this day and age? Because it sounds like it's not, but it is. Yeah. So I'm behind it 100%.
Well, we can't wait to come out to Townsend and Alcoa. And I actually was just by Heath Distillery over the weekend getting gas. So I will go there.
We don't have a gas pump there.
You do right around the corner.
Were they giving you like some of the heads and tails put in your truck? Is that one of those
the Exxon
flex fuel deals? Is that what you got? Is theirs fancy like that?
There's the Exxon station right around the corner.
They have great tater logs. You should get the tater logs. Yeah.
They have good food there, but
that really sick horse that's all emaciated.
Y'all have great whiskey, great company, and that company is not even referring to your company. It's the company you keep, the people that you have around. I know the 3 of you are going to have a lot of fun. I feel bad for everybody that has to work with you, especially Jenna. I think you should start paying for her therapy bills already.
It's called whiskey.
And I just want to thank her for getting us all together, because even though we're all friends, it took somebody to actually wrangle the 5 of us to sit down at a table. I want people to look sometime here in October for company Bourbon. It's going to be out in Tennessee. All stores, select number of stores. Where should they go find you?
We're spreading in all regions. It'll be in all 3 regions.
We obviously won't be open every store right away, but we'll be in.
Yeah, we'll start canvassing the state probably mid-October, and hopefully by the end of October, 1st of November, we'll have gone into every market and introduced it and helped get it onto the shelves in all those markets. So
And as Jeff says, the whiskey should have a red hint. It will be the Hunt for Red October.
That was nice.
Go find it in all your stores. Yeah. Is there a company Instagram yet?
Don't fluff him.
There is a company distilling
regret that
Instagram. Jeff is there. He switched his Instagram name. He is Company Distiller 1 because he is the first distiller at Company.
And only just as a point of fact.
I mean, he
Hashtag
is
company
a distiller.
_distilling if you're looking for the new handle.
Well, thank all of you for coming. This has been a pleasure. You can find us on Facebook at Dad's Drinking Bourbon, Twitter at Bourbon Dads, Instagram at Dad's Drinking Bourbon. Find us wherever you download your podcast. You already have. So leave us an open and honest review, just like we leave open and honest reviews about the whiskey we drink. Gentlemen, thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Zeke, where else can the folks find us?
Good old Nashville, Tennessee.
Cheers.
Ciao.